We'll call the meeting February 6th, 2025 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee into order. It is now officially 1:01 and we'll do roll call.
Yes, Member Keegan. Present. Member Duber for Member Lindhood. Present. For Alimi.
Present.
Member Duad. Not be here yet.
I'm in the water.
He's online, but Member Rebuffo.
Here.
Steve, you're unmuted. Member Rebuffo is here. Member Boland.
Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay.
Member White.
Here.
We have Member Hartman for Member Coy.
Here.
Member Kohlhaas.
Here.
Member Rudolph.
Here.
And Member Babb.
Present.
Great, everybody's here and accounted for. You have quorum.
Excellent. Aaron, would you mind reading the public involvement announcement for us?
Of course, happy to, once I find it. AMATS committee meetings are open to the public and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by a staff or consultant, then the committee is given an opportunity to discuss the business item. The public is then invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. Thank you.
Right. Moving on to the agenda and approval thereof. Do we have an approval of the agenda?
Move to approve.
Mr. Boland.
Second.
Do we have any proposed changes to the agenda?
Move to add a request for an update on the STIP amendment as an informational item to the end of the meeting as item D.
Seconded.
Want to do one change at a time?
Please.
Anyone opposed to the amendment? We're adding informational item D.
60.
6D. Okay. Any other changes?
Understand there's a conflict for the folks given the Rabbit Creek pedestrian overcrossing repairs update. So wanted to amend the agenda to move item 6B to occur before action item 5, or item 5, the action items.
Second.
And maybe discussion on that one too. Maybe we move the STIP update to that part too, just because some of the DOT folks there might have input, or I guess I don't know who we're anticipating given the STIP update.
It was more of a general request from DOT. If DOT is not prepared to speak to that, then maybe we can discuss it at that point and move it to the agenda for next meeting. But I'm open to moving it along with.
Okay. Yeah, maybe some friendly amendment. Can we move that along with it?
Yeah, moving, sorry, you guys need to speak up a little so everybody in the room can hear. Moving the STIP amendment item to also be as part of that first item for 6B and just discuss it all at the same time. Can we do that as a friendly amendment? Yes, you can.
Any objections to that? Hearing none. Any other changes to the agenda?
Yes, sorry.
Oh.
I'd like to move to add Representative Mina's request for a letter of support for HB 26 to the action items in the agenda as action item 5B.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? I will say that state employees have a difficult time and working for the executive branch and commenting on legislative action. So at that point, it'll probably be a need for state employees to abstain and pull themselves back. And since I'm handing the gavel today, what I propose is I won't be involved in any of it. Luke and we won't leave the room. That way you guys don't have to worry about it. We can still sit here and run the meeting, but we won't be engaged or involved in discussions. So if that's okay with everybody. Unless someone wants to take the gavel. All right. So we'll be adding that item as 5D to the agenda. Any other changes on the agenda?
I have one more
Okay.
request.
One more request?
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to request that maybe the next meeting, if we can get an update from DOT on the complete streets policy.
Okay.
Somebody might be available to give us an update on that. But that's for the next meeting, but I'm not asking to rearrange the agenda for today.
We'll work with them on getting that for next meeting. Thank you.
All right, do we have any objections to adopting the agenda as amended? All right, not seeing any, the agenda is approved. All right, we'll move into item 4, approving our minutes from the meetings of both November 7th and December 5th. I think our November 7th was the record agenda item discussion. So I just wanted to go on record and say I appreciate the note taking for that meeting and trying to capture all those conversations and changes to everything going on. It was an awful lot to read through and sit through. So I can't imagine what it was to try and capture all that. So I appreciate that. So do we have a motion on the table? Do we want to do with them both at the same time, or do we want to tackle one at a time as a group? All right, let's go for both of them and see what happens. All right, is there a motion for the minutes?
Move to approve the November and December meeting minutes.
Second it.
Okay. Are there any questions? Any changes from the committee? The objections in approving the minutes from the November 7th, December 12th meeting? Right, the minutes approved. I believe if I was keeping track of things properly, we're heading into discussion on informational item 6B.
Correct. And I believe Lauren Little with DOT will be presenting on this item. Lauren, if you're on and would like to share your screen, go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. Oh, I always forget PowerPoint is quirky. All right. Well, thanks everybody for making time for this today. Just wanted to give a quick update from DOT on the Rabbit Creek pedestrian overcrossing. We did complete the inspections. We have a request for funding in on this. We did hire an independent engineer to do the analysis, and the short version is kind of what we suspected, that the wind loading at the time that this bridge was designed has changed quite a bit in code. And it got tested. So we are planning, I have to figure out how to advance the slides here. There we go. We are working to have this repaired and back open before the school season next year. We've got a project manager assigned in Central Region. As I said, we're getting the funding pushed through. We estimate it's about $2 million to get the repairs done. And then we did go ahead and preemptively evaluate a similar construction style pedestrian overcrossing in Anchorage, the Willow Crest overcrossing. And just out of an abundance of caution, we'll be using state forces to go do some improvements to the welds where basically where the cage ties into the bridge structure, just to make extra sure that one is up to snuff. And that's what I've got on Rabbit Creek. Are there any questions?
Hi, Lauren. This is Taylor Keegan from Parks and Rec. I believe that Parks and Rec maintains this, removes snow from it. So if you have any information that you want to share regarding maintenance or coordinate for winter maintenance, we'd love to chat.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll be putting back an overhang similar to what was there prior to keep snow off the actual structure itself. And I think they're going to do a slightly different design so that it's a little bit it sheds the snow a little more efficiently to kind of minimize that snow loading component as well.
Great, perfect.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing anything in here, anything online?
There was a comment put in the chat. I can just read it out loud from Lindsay. I do glad to hear they'll secure the Willow Crest Bridge. It's very bouncy and odd feeling.
Thank you,
And then-
Lauren.
Then I can touch on the STIP if folks
Yep.
do want to hear about that and complete streets.
Perfect.
So STIP Amendment 2 is in review with Federal Highways. We've got another meeting tomorrow with them, just going through and making sure everything is up to snuff. It's clear what's planned, and we've got things coded correctly. So this will be our 4th or 5th, I think, meeting. So we're getting close on that. I believe the goal, and I hate putting dates out there because we want to make sure that we have everything really good and accurate for the public review. But I believe the goal is in the next couple weeks for the public comment period. And that's what I've got for STIP update. And then complete streets. We did get a recommendations report back from the consultant. It was missing quite a bit of feedback, and there were some components that we're still working through the details on. So we hope to have that wrapped up this spring and be moving more into implementation. But that's where Complete Streets is sitting at for the statewide policy effort.
Thanks, Lauren. Any questions from the committee?
I do have a question about Complete Streets, and thank you for the updates on both of those. This is Maylee Fabab. Do you know for the Complete Streets any timeline on public feedback on that?
I would have to check with the project manager on that piece.
Great, thank you.
And I will say the step we're at right now is the recommendations report. So the consultant was basically providing recommendations of what the policy needs to contain. So we would need to be drafting the policy, and that would probably be the next step at which we'd be getting public feedback, and of course incorporating the Vision Zero team in all of that as well.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the public? Not seeing any here in the room. Anything online? Okay. Right.
Online.
Thank you again, Lauren.
Yep, thank you.
Right, we're gonna revert back to action items. We're on 5A. So this is for the letter of support for MOA FTA Designated Recipient. Aaron, are you gonna walk us through this one?
Yes, just 1 second. Putting up the memo now. Having some issues with my computer. So why not? Okay, everybody. So, AMATS staff received a request from the Public Transportation Department for a letter of support. I'll do my best to explain this item, but Bart probably has the details, so I hope I don't mess anything up. The request was to provide a letter of support for direct recipient designation for FTA funding. So some history on this as outlined in the memo. There was a letter designating the Greater Anchorage Area Borough, GAB, what an acronym, as the direct recipient that was dated in 1975. However, it appears that there was no designation updated when it was transitioned from GAB to the municipality of Anchorage. So this was recently discovered, and to rectify this, FTA requires that the governor draft or do a designation letter reflecting that the MOA, municipality of Anchorage, is the designated recipient of these funds. And then there looks like there's a request to help simplify the process a little and to encompass all of the funds in this letter. The funds are the 5307 for the Urbanized Area Formula Grant Program, the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities, the 5310, and then the Formula Grant for Buses and Bus Facilities Program, 5339. All of these funding sources are found in the tip on table 9 under the transit table. I do want to note, as it says on this here, this is just designating a recipient. There are funding sources in our area that have multiple designated recipients. This is not speaking to the split letter that typically happens between those designated recipients. This is just offering a letter of support that the municipality of Anchorage should be designated a recipient of FTA funds. So the letter is before you for review, and the recommendation from staff is to recommend to the policy committee a support of sending this letter. It's drafted to go to the governor. I believe it'll be incorporated through the whole process that comes from the municipality of Anchorage on their request. So it's just part of the requirements that an MPO in the area, any MPOs within the area provide current support. I guess objection they could provide, but we're asking for a letter of support at this time. That is all I had. If you have anything else, Bart is here to help answer if he wants to add anything.
You did a great job. I don't have anything to add. Other than for the last 50 years, we have been operating under the assumption that we had this letter in place. FTA had been doing the same. And in cleaning up their files, they realized that we didn't have this letter. So this is hopefully just a housekeeping exercise. It does affect our grants. Everything is frozen for us right now. So we don't have access to our federal money that hasn't already been allocated. So we need to get this moving.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Nothing in the room, nothing online. So what is the will of the committee?
Move to recommend that the policy committee transmit the letter.
I'll second.
Any objections to proving the motion? All right, not seeing any. Motion's approved.
Moved was by Zach and seconded by
Let's keep it.
Steve Rebuffo.
For Steve.
I think.
Okay, Steve or Buffo.
That's friendly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, action item 5B. Got a memo of comments on the Seward to Glen Pell. PEL.
Yes. Okay, everybody. So as you know that there when we wrote this letter, there was a comment period that was going to be ending, but that comment period has been extended. So I apologize that is not reflected on this memo. We will update that for the policy committee. There's a public comment period currently underway for the Seward to Glen PEL effort, where they have draft alternatives out there and they're seeking public comment. So staff reviewed the material and is providing 3 comments for your review, and is also asking if the technical advisory committee members have any comments they would like to include. Please discuss those and recommend them for the policy committee to review as well. So I'm just going to go through staff's comments really quickly so you know what the intent behind them is. The first comment is in the public material provided online, there was a comment listed that said after level 2 screening and additional public feedback, an alternative will be recommended in the draft PEL study document. When you review the FHWA PEL guidebook, it lists that there should be a range of options used for the NEPA process, not one alternative. Additionally, when you look at DOT's, this isn't in the memo here, but it can be added. When you look at DOT's PEL handbook, it also mentions that there should be multiple options selected as part of the PEL or included as part of the PEL. We've provided both of those pages for you on your iPad so you can see where they are and what it says in there. We also, I think, have paper copies over there if need be for the public. And staff is recommending that the Seward to Glen PL should not be providing a single recommendation, but provide options that can be looked at and evaluated as part of the NEPA process, which corresponds to the handbooks that are out there. Next comment, we're requesting that more clarification be provided on the difference between the 2050 MTP and the MTP plus alternatives. They're a little bit confusing in the materials that were handed out to the public. I did get a number of members of the public wanting to know when AMATS developed the MTP plus alternative and how was it done and what process, what public process. And I had to explain that was not done by AMATS, that was done by the project team. The naming conventions are a little confusing. And when you look at the materials in the public information that was provided, they kind of switch between MTP plus and this thing called a Main Street option. So I think just keep it consistent. Whatever you want to call it is fine. Just keep it consistent so it's easy for the public to follow along. I don't think there was any malicious intent here. I'm not trying to accuse anything of anybody, but just make it clear for the public and even technical members as they're reviewing it. And then the last one is all alternatives should be given equal consideration of viability. When you hear how the different alternatives are being talked about in public meetings or in the online materials, there appears to be favoritism towards the parkway alternatives. Whether that's intended or not, that's not what we're trying to say here. It's just that's how it appears to the public. Again, there was comments that I received directly from members of the public being like, why is it that the MTP, the 2050 MTP of MTP Plus isn't receiving the same level of support or, viability as part of the process? Examples include that only the challenges for the 2050 MTP were listed on the public material that were presented. So it appears that that's the only alternative that has challenges. Everything else looks like it's okay. Even how they were talked about, there was some comments provided that from the project team that the 2050 MTP or the MTP plus alternative isn't viable because the assembly is not going to fund transit in the future. That's not really up to the project team to make a determination on. It's their job to provide the information to everybody to say, here's what you need in order to make this viable. If you do not get it, here are the impacts. Again, I don't think there's any malicious intent behind this. I just want to make sure everybody understands that all of the alternatives that are being looked at are viable in some way, shape, or form. And we just need to give a fair platform for everybody to look at them as we move forward. Whatever is selected in the ultimate NEPA process, that's not what we're debating here. So one thing that's not on here that I do want to say, I do really appreciate DOT, specifically Galen's effort on the PEL. I know that at times things have come across pretty harsh. It's just the nature of the process and nothing is intended there. I know Galen's here, so I think Galen has done a very good job at trying to communicate with everybody, to listen, to grow and understand what a PEL is, because I think PELs are complicated. Everybody comes from a different background. We have planners, we have engineers, And I think that Galen has done a really good job, not only working with the community, his continued meeting with like the Fairview group, Lori as well. Lori, you're here. Lori attends those meetings. She is also doing a good job at helping to communicate and understand the concerns from the community, from the policymakers, from the technical members, and even for staff. They did a very good job at dealing with my abrupt nature on things. So I want to congratulate, commandeer, or whatever the wording is. I'm sorry, not commandeer, but commend Galen and his team for their work so far, and look forward to what the final product is, because I think it'll be a beneficial one for the community in the end. So thank you. That's all I had.
All right, any questions or comments from the committee?
I just want to say thanks to Aaron and all his work on staff of drafting these and for their comments here leading into this. And then excited to hear what the TAC and policy meeting have to add to these comments, and I really appreciate the input there. Also, as you mentioned, we did extend the comment period, so that's open for anybody to comment through the end of the month. So another opportunity, not just here, but if you have comments that you don't want to bring up here, or there's other avenues there. I did want to speak to a couple of the items here, just as we start the discussion. So when we're talking about item 1 and an alternative that kind of does sound singular, I think the idea here is that this Pell is likely going to result in a suite of projects here. We're evaluating port connections. We're evaluating Main Street options, Ingra Gamble. We're looking at Greenway improvements on Hyder. We're evaluating Parkway options. There's trail options within here. And each of these would, I think, lead to its own recommendation, depend on how the Pell finalizes itself. And with each of those, there would, upon completion of the Pell, we would go into project development, which would have its own NEPA document, depending on the level of impacts that we have there. So the level of document could vary significantly between the different alternatives in the different areas within the Pell study area, which the Pell study area is pretty significant there. So anyways, I think we'll be providing a more detailed response there, but I guess, kind of our thoughts here as it's moving forward. Number 2, appreciate that comment, and yeah, we'll definitely work on increasing clarity on MTP versus MTP plus versus Main Street options, and we'll also work on communicating that the MTP plus was not an AMATS generated option there. So I'm sorry for the confusion on that one. And then on number 3, did not want to give the impression that there's favoritism towards any alternative within this. And so we are continuing to evaluate all the alternatives here and looking at those independently and how they interact with the other alternatives within the study area. So it gets pretty complex as you're looking at all the different things that we're trying to accomplish with this Pell study. So again, we'll have better, more detailed responses there, but those are kind of some initial thoughts on the 3 items that we have here. And Galen is available to answer questions too. So if I misstated anything too, wave your hand and say, Luke, you were wrong on this one. Or, but I think completely agree with Aaron there. That I think Galen's doing a great job here, and appreciate all his outreach, HDR as well with this Pell study. So
I can provide a little more context too.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Galen Jones, Alaska DOT, for the record. So yeah, first of all, I wanted to thank AMATS staff for their thoughtful and constructive comments. And then just in response to the last thing that Aaron said, really appreciate that. And it's been really great working with AMATS on this. But what he said just kind of points out one thing, which is, and it echoes what Luke was saying, it's just, there's a lot. There's just a lot of stuff to keep in mind. It's like a golf swing, and you focus too much on one thing, you forget the other thing. And then, so it's been really great to have these sort of constructive comments, as we get these comments, we're like, oh yeah, duh, yeah, we totally should have worded that different. Or yes, I could see how that could come off that way, because we have so many things to think about all at the same time. So I really appreciate the comments and look forward to the committee's comments if you have any additional ones. Yeah, regarding that that first bullet, we kind of look that it could have been worded better, a little bit better, rather than just saying there's one recommendation. We're thinking of this as more of like a sub area plan, because that's really what it is. It's huge. It's not just like some PELs will just be one corridor. And so this is more of a sub area plan to touch on recommendations for all the roadways that Luke mentioned. But what we want to do with this PEL is really, we don't want to leave it open for potentially multiple corridors still being out in the open if a regional connection or that parkway connection is warranted. Because Fairview has been burdened by that uncertainty for decades and for so long, and that's really one of the biggest things we're trying to solve. So if we come out with a suite of these recommendations that say, well, you know, you could have a corridor here, or you could have a corridor here if a corridor is warranted, that uncertainty will still be out there. And that has resulted in lots of negative things for the neighborhood. So that we hope to, if a parkway connection is warranted, to just provide one corridor for that. And then within the corridor, there could be multiple alternatives. You know, you have an intersection here, like what kind of intersection control is warranted there? And that would all be fleshed out during the process. That's it on the first one. And then I think Luke pretty much handled it on the rest. I had some notes, but he captured it all. So yeah, thank you.
Any other question, comments?
I wouldn't mind making a comment if nobody else has anything. I just wanted to second the commendations of the team. It was great to meet with the team about the planning department's comments, and we appreciate all your receptiveness and the work that you've done on this project. I won't be making any comments or requesting any additions to these because the planning department will be providing comments on the project. But I do support the 3 comments that are listed in this letter. And I did have a question for you, if you don't mind clarifying. So what I'm hearing you say about PEL is that the end result of the PEL will be a selected corridor, correct? But maybe that corridor will have multiple permutations or phases or projects with the intent is to select a corridor, a path through the area, rather than having multiple options at the end of the PEL.
I think that's been one of the things that's been really expressed by the Fairview community is the uncertainty there of where a capacity connection might go on there. And we're evaluating the need for a capacity connection too. So that's still being evaluated right now. But if the recommendations from the PEL can show an alignment so that folks can plan on what improvements are anticipated in the area and give a little bit more certainty so that we can see more investment in this area of the community, I think that's a win for the PEL.
Yeah, Galen Jones, Alaska DOT. And yeah, just to emphasize, it has not been determined if a corridor, which would imply a regional connection or a parkway, is warranted yet. You know, we're still working closely with the public. We still have traffic modeling to do. We still have to do our second level of screening. So that hasn't been determined yet or lays out. But if it does get determined that one of the parkway alternatives is warranted, then yes, we want to provide that certainty. And that would also come with recommendations for how to conform with the planning documents that the city has, that other local plans, Fairview neighborhood, to try to accomplish those long-term goals too, such as a Main Street and a Hyder Greenway. So it would come with both of them. If there was a recommendation for what used to be called the MTP Plus, in retrospect, it's not a good name. So changing them all to be like letters is going to solve that problem. And then just to address the sensitivity analysis in a comment too, really that was an analysis of the MTP 2050, and then it was an analysis of the Main Street options. So that's how we should have worded that. But if those Main Street options are recommended moving forward, the PEL will have to determine how those can happen And maybe those happen more in the long term. So we're looking at the long term and short term potential, which goes back to the not just necessarily one recommendation, because it's kind of a sub area study. So like you said, it'll involve phasing, when can we build or implement certain projects, and how all these projects tie together is all part of that complication that we intend to solve.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
Thanks for the question.
Any other questions, comments?
And I just have some questions about me interpreting the cross sections, if you don't mind.
No, go for it.
So one of them appeared that there was the roadway and it said above the tunnel. Does that mean there's a tunnel? I mean, is that truly what that, am I understanding that correctly? Could you explain that one?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So Galen Jones, Alaska DOT. So that would apply to two of the alternatives. One is alternative C, where there was a parkway connection in a tunnel under under 15th Avenue. So the tunnel would be bored using a boring machine and not disrupt the traffic above, and it would run parallel to 15th Avenue underneath it. And so those functions that 15th Avenue in this case have, being more of a local connection, it's a beautiful complete street, would be unimpacted by the parkway connection. And this is that portion through Fairview that kind of separates South and North Fairview. In the other case is alternative AB, parkway or refined parkway alternative AB. That would be the same thing, a bored tunnel underneath Ingra. And so it would be the same situation. Ingra would be above, and then I would foresee the Pell making a recommendation, if there were a parkway alternative if a parkway alternative was recommended, then make a recommendation on Ingra to turn that into a complete street, a two-way complete street, because that is in line with Fairview's neighborhood plan.
And then the other one I was looking at where it showed the cross section with like a bridge feature. I wasn't sure if that was interpreted just to be a small segment or like a viaduct along, 15th Avenue south of Merrifield. I couldn't tell from the graphics how long that feature was actually elevated. Could you respond to that, please?
The only alternative that had an elevated feature was Parkway Alternative D, which is the one that crosses the Chester Creek Greenbelt and then traverses into the runway protection zone south of 15th Avenue and south of the north-south runway. On alternative C, the one that I just described with the tunnel, that would, as it comes out of the tunnel east of Fairview, as the natural topography drops low at the south end of the Merrifield north-south runway. I'm sure there's a real name for that runway, but I'm not an aviation guy, so I don't know it. But then it is at grade with 15th Avenue. So that's alternative C, and it joins 15th Avenue. So I'm not.
Because I saw somewhere in there when it mentioned viaducts, and when I'm thinking viaduct, I'm thinking of a long trend,
Yes.
corridor with an elevated section. So I guess for, not to spend a lot of time on it, maybe enhance the graphics for better understanding for the public.
Yeah, that's a great.
For me, I found, trying to really interpret it, the sections are small, but maybe you can do a little bit more enhanced graphics so that it could better provide that to the public.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And now that I understand the portion you're talking about, that would just be that alternative D, and then viaduct would only cross basically from 15th Avenue to Firegate. Or not all the way, sorry. It would just be in the actual parcel owned by, they're both owned by MOA, the Runway Protection Zone, and Chester Creek, but just the Chester Creek parcel, as soon as it got out of that Chester Creek parcel, it would go back to ad grade.
Okay.
So the viaduct is just in that portion,
A limited section.
a limited section.
Yeah, okay. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if I were to visualize when I saw viaduct mentioned in the report, the challenges of snow removal and carrying that, if it's just a small segment, street maintenance or DOT maintenance can accommodate that. But if it was a long viaduct, it could be challenging, I would foresee. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Yep. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Not seeing any in the room, nothing online. All right, what is the will of the committee?
Move to recommend that the policy committee approve staff comments.
Second it.
Are there any objections? To the motion? Any changes, edits, anything we want to make? Okay. Hearing none, it's approved. All right, moving on to action item 5C, process for AMATS legislative appearance requests. Aaron, I'm assuming you're taking this one?
Yes, I am. I'll take this one. You all have before you a memo. I apologize, it is not available, for most, probably on the screen really quick. Fine. Second. Zoom in so people have an easier opportunity to read this. So, little bit of background. Recently, I was invited to participate in a Alaska House Transportation Committee meeting in January to talk about AMATS's concerns on the 24 through 27 STIP. I attended, I provided a presentation that was limited to pulling quotes directly from the letters that the policy committee had approved to be sent out on both the original STIP and then the amendment number 1 was provided to the Department of Transportation with some concerns on the STIP. And then I also included a slide on current efforts to collaborate with DOT and the STIP and process moving forward. After that meeting, I was emailed along with the other PC members, the quote that you see above you, that the PC member had not had an opportunity to listen to my testimony, but did receive some concerns about it. And then that for future reference, the policy committee should make the decision on whether you should represent AMATS in a political environment. We should give it an opportunity to review and comment on your presentation. Another PC member said, please add this to the agenda for discussion in February. So it is before you all as the technical advisory committee to review this. Although this is a policy level decision, I'm trying to outline that there are technical aspects to this. If we are to follow this comment that was provided to me, what that process would look like is anytime a request would come to me asking for presentation or something like that in a political environment, I would have to get it added to the PC agenda, technical advisory committee agenda first, then policy committee agenda. Depending on timing, that could take a month or a few weeks. These appearance requests have been coming in typically a week before the appearance is supposed to take place. So getting that through to the policy committee approval is next to impossible. I cannot email the policy committee members and have them make decisions via email. That is not allowed as part of the Open Meetings Act. I cannot discuss it with them because it could be an action item. We're pretty limited on that kind of communication because everything has to be open and transparent. Now, I want to call attention to something. On the agenda, it says legislative appearance requests, but in the comment, it just says political environment. So here are a couple of other political environments that it could pertain to. The Assembly. The Assembly is a political environment. I often have to attend the Assembly meetings to provide and comments or speak on items that we send to the Assembly for action. I sometimes get called up on other items that are not AMATS related, but they ask my opinion as AMATS on them. We also attend the Assembly Transportation Committee meeting, which is a political environment. We also attend community council meetings. I don't know if any of you have been to the community council meeting recently, but legislative members attend those on the regular. That could be a political environment. Public meetings that we have on projects also have legislative members attend, have assembly members attend. That could be a political environment. So my first question would be, who determines what is considered a political environment? Has that been defined? Should that be defined? In all transparency, this is my job to attend and represent AMATS. This is what I'm paid to do. This is what is expected of me or has been in the past. If there is a desire to change that and require me to get approval before attending, we'll work on the process and make it happen. I just want to let you know it will have an impact on AMATS's ability to respond and participate in these different kind of events that go on in our community that are pretty critical for us to be a part of. So it's just before you all to see if you have any recommendations that you would like to provide to the policy committee, not on the policy itself, but on any technical specific aspects of this request. Thank you.
Do we have a policy? Is there something in our operating agreement that spells out our process and protocol for this?
No.
So I'll open it up. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee? I've got a few comments.
Well, I'll
but
start.
I'll let you
start
guys
with-
go first. Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. Was there a recommendation from that policy committee member on who might be better suited?
No, the comment is all the comment on the screen you see before you is the only communication I've had on this item other than asking it to be added to the agenda. So I think that would have to be part of the discussion with the policy committee or a recommendation from the TAC.
I guess, in general, I think maybe it'd be good to have a policy for this so that, Aaron staff has a clear direction on how they navigate these types of situations. And I anticipate that's going to take some time for us to pull together, and would go through TAC and policy. In the near term, I understand Aaron has a request currently to participate in another legislative hearing. And with our short legislative sessions that we have here, I don't know if it's realistic to have presentations vetted by TAC and policy. So I guess long-term policy, and then I guess like short-term, it would be good to give Aaron the green light or bumpers or something along those lines for participation during this legislative session.
I would second that comment. I think the timelines especially concern me in regards to AMATS being able to even function on a reasonable level. So if the policy committee decides that they would like staff to maybe draft up something for us to look at in regards to a general policy about what may or may not be presented, maybe that could be an option. But in the short term, I support the idea of Aaron being able to function as he does already.
I have a question, Aaron, as is based off of this correspondence, are you and your staff just holding off from anything that might be construed as a political environment? So if no policy committee action takes place, you're just sitting on your hands if the politician is involved because of this kind of directive?
Yeah, so we've gotten 2 requests to attend the Senate Transportation Committee meeting in February. They gave us, the first was an initial request where I had to say no. The second was another request saying here's some dates. And so that's kind of on hold. It looks like they're planning on having the other MPOs at the February 27th, I believe, the Thursday after the policy committee meeting, to give a presentation on what MPOs are and how they're involved in the process and that kind of stuff. Right now, I've had to say we're on hold until we get a decision by the policy committee. When it comes to other things outside of that particular request, I'm just gonna have to go to the assembly meetings that are coming up. We have action items on there like the tip and the MTP for introduction. And in case any questions come up, I need to be there to be able to answer them. So I'm not trying to, get anybody upset, but there are some things we must attend in order to make sure that process continues moving forward. So at least for the legislative side of things, for the state legislative side of things, we're going to hold off on attending until we hear from the policy committee.
I'd like to add that it seems like your job and your staff's job is to be transparent and responsive. And so what this does is, I think government is inherently not super agile. And so we're just putting additional muck into that process. And it seems like a major hindrance to the basic functions of your job to have to go through an approval process that requires the policy committee or certain members of the policy committee, which is also kind of unclear and problematic. So if I were to start to make a recommendation, it would be this has no business on our agenda or the policy committee's agenda, and we should let you do your job.
It's very direct.
That's why I'm saying I will start to make a recommendation because I'm relying on my peers here to help create a better recommendation that builds off of my core response.
I agree that without you being able to talk at these meetings, we lose the regional voice. The municipality and the state DOT has their lobbyists there, but it's nice that we have the regional voice where, Aaron, you can go and talk about the things that have been discussed and approved. And really the message should be the same, whether you're giving it or someone from the policy committee is giving it. Nobody should be talking about things that haven't gone through the appropriate process. And I don't think that you're doing that. So I would agree it's completely appropriate and necessary for you to be able to attend these meetings and speak. I don't even know if a policy is needed. I think it's just business as usual. Aaron represents AMATS at wherever he is asked to represent AMATS at. That's my opinion.
It's up to you guys what you want to do. I mean, we're here to serve the TAC and the policy committee, so.
So I was going to throw out, just as someone who's been asked to testify numerous times in front of legislature. I think my thought process and some of what we've talked about internally is just to give Aaron cover with a policy or something so that, in this day and age, political winds change frequently. And this is nothing against Aaron. I think just thinking big picture, there's going to be times when Aaron is being asked to testify or share his thoughts on things that he may not necessarily be 100% comfortable with, or there may be something where it's put him in a difficult position. And I think having some sort of policy or something that he can hang his hat on and say, based on the policy, I can't speak to this effect or something. And so I think just my recommendation would be, and it's no slam on Aaron, but just to have something in writing that Aaron or the executive director position and staff could point back to for those moments when they do need cover from the political environment. Not to hinder what Aaron does or the staff does, but just to provide them some cover.
I think that's great. You're recommending a P&P to clarify those roles. And it can also reiterate that Aaron has the capacity to do his work.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would agree with that.
Thank you. You're all amazing. This is really not about me. It's about the position.
Yep.
So, if we move something, stop.
Yeah, and I'll empathize with you, Aaron. I haven't been to Juneau to represent the port in 5 years. So I can appreciate your concern on this matter.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that if anything is to move forward, it'd be about the position, not the person.
Correct.
Because I don't think this is a personal attack on me as staff. I don't think that in any way with this comment. I think this is a valid concern to be brought up from a policy committee member to be like, why are you out there representing us on a political thing? I think it's valid for us to have this discussion and be like, are we comfortable with it? So I don't take any personal offense to this. It just needs to be transparent of what our process is so that legislative members have that expectation when they ask for the request and I have to say no, well, here's why, or say yes, and here's why. So just make sure we all take a step back from the person and focus on the positions. Not that I think we are.
Would AMATS be the most appropriate body to draft the policy and procedure for review?
Staff? Yeah, we can work on it. Looking at Christine, she's like, oh. I think because we just went through this peer exchange, we have some peers we can reach out to and see if they have similar policies in place or how they handle this type of interaction. I was unable to reach out to him prior to this meeting. I hope to be able to reach out to him before the policy committee and get a little more information together. Kind of help move forward from there.
Motion that AMATS will draft a policy and procedure for the technical advisory committee to review and make a recommendation on. There's no particular timeline.
We have to do public participation before we make motion.
Can we make a note of that so we can come back to
Yes.
it?
Keep it in your mind. Sorry.
Sorry.
Hate it when I do that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A really nice motion and then I have
Not gonna
to.
be that good.
We want to make sure we're transparent for everybody, everything, so.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? All right, any questions or any comments from the public?
James Darzik, DOT coordinator to AMATS. I have been obviously watching the testimony of parents provided to the committees, and I really am impressed at his ability to stay focused on process, which is what staff does, and focus on actions that the policy committee has taken, which are concrete, finite steps, not a interpretation of what a policy might be, but literally this is what they have done, and has done an excellent job of containing his remarks to those very finite and clear topics, not editorializing. And I think that is a excellent framework to consider what this PMP might look like, because what he is doing right now seems to be exactly what he should be instructed to be doing. Or, I'm sorry, not him, the executive director should be instructed.
Any other comments from the public? Anything online? Okay. What is the will of the committee?
I'd like to make a motion for AMATS to draft a policy and procedure relating to how the director functions and provides presentations in addition to standard process. No timeline on that. The draft, see, it's not as good. The draft would be presented to the technical advisory committee for review and further recommendation.
Can I make a friendly amendment? Just that I think that we need to recommend to the policy committee that they request that staff do, as you are saying.
Yeah,
that
thanks.
it can be brought back to us.
Great.
Amendment?
Can I also offer a friendly amendment? It is, and to allow Aaron to continue presenting in the meantime. For the executive director.
So we have a motion, two friendly amendments. We need a second.
Second.
I'll second if no one else has.
Yeah, who's our, Taylor, you moved it. Who seconded?
Me.
Okay.
Or
Thank
Steve.
you.
Any objections to the motion?
Sorry, real quickly, let me read back what I have to make sure I capture it because of the friendly amendment.
Yep.
So the main motion was for AMATS to draft a PMP relating to how the director functions and provides presentations and standard process. Draft would be presented to TAC for review and further recommendation. First friendly amendment was to recommend this to the policy committee for this action. Is that correct? Okay. And then a second friendly amendment was to allow the executive director to continue presenting in the meantime. And just for clarity's sake, when you say for AMATS to draft this, do you mean AMATS staff?
Collaboration between staff and the AMATS director.
Yeah, so it'd be.
Yep.
AMATS staff. Okay. Because, I just want to make sure are we saying the PC should draft this or is this AMATS staff should draft it and bring it to the committees? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
May I suggest one more friendly amendment?
Yes.
Yeah, where you use the word, the executive director continue to present, I would change that to represent.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So change present to represent. And Bart, you're okay with that?
Yeah.
This is your friendly amendment. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I think we got it all. It's always fun here. Lori, do you have any issues? Okay. That means I'll hear about it later, so just go on.
All right, what is we've already got the motion. Any objections to the motion that's been amended friendly as stated by what Aaron read to us? Any objections? Okay. No objections, motion is approved. All right, if I'm tracking correctly here, now we've got action item 5D, which I believe is introduction of HB 26 language for discussion.
Yeah, and since I was the one who requested to add this to the action items, I guess I'm on the hook to give a little bit of background on it. So for the public and for the record, Representative Mina introduced House Bill 26 recently, and House Bill 26 codifies federal requirements for Alaska Department of Transportation to coordinate with public, tribal, and community transit programs as they study alternative means of improving transportation. It also expands the scope of DOT's studies to include analyzing alternate modes of transit in rural and remote areas. So I believe that the AMATS has always done an excellent job of including transit in their plans and recommendations. And from a technical point of view, I think that this change is a positive one. And I was hoping to discuss this with the committee and see if the committee might be willing to recommend to the policy committee that they consider sending a letter of support for this change to state statutes.
Luke and I are going to remove ourselves from the discussion, but I will continue to function and move this one forward if you all are okay with it. If there's any objections to me and Luke sitting in the room, speak now, forever hold your peace. All right. So are there any questions or concerns, comments by the committee?
So is this something that, I'm trying to create more work, a letter of support could be whipped up before the policy committee that, we can set some guardrails behind that can be transmitted, or is this just like a one sentence thing that we could ask the policy committee to give support behind HB 26? We have any mechanism that we can, this through PC, that might make sense?
We could maybe draft something up, or maybe request the staff, pull something together to present to the PC committee instead of trying to draft it here. So that could be part of our recommendation. And I think part of the question might be whether I'd like to keep this pretty technical, you know, the technical aspects of it. So it'll be up to the policy committee whether or not they feel that it's appropriate for AMATS to be providing comment on state legislation or new bills. But for our for this committee, if you think that it's a positive move, maybe we can at least provide that information to the policy committee.
I did appreciate in the peer exchange that the new metropolitan organization, Matsu Valley, the MVP, is including organizations such as tribes and also their school district. And I think that that provides an could provide some interesting voices. So I would support investigating adding tribes to provide a formal mechanism for comment. Or participation.
Yeah, from staff's perspective, if you would like us to draft a letter for the PC meeting, if you guys have anything you would like in there. And it would be nice if you could get that to us either now or after the meeting, however you want to do it. So we make sure we capture kind of your intent of what you would like to see in the letter for those who can participate.
You have a deadline for that to get it to the PC?
Yeah, so we have to post, the agenda next Thursday. So anything we need to throw together has to be done by at least, if you were providing comments to us or anything to us, it would need to be by the end of day on the Tuesday, the 11th. We would have to make sure that we get everything ready Wednesday or Thursday posting. So it's a pretty quick turnaround if we want to get this thrown together, which I feel confident we can do.
Any other questions, comments from the committee? Seen any comments from the public? Nothing here in the room, anything online?
Nothing online.
Okay. What is the will of the committee?
I'd like to move to request that the policy committee take Representative Mina's request for a letter of support under consideration. And with a note, the technical advisory committee supports the intent to expand the scope of DOT's long-term statewide transportation planning to ensure local input by public, tribal, and community transit programs. And then I do have some potential language for a letter if you want me to include that in motion for discussion by the committee. You all are amenable to that. I don't know if we need a second before I start that discussion.
Yeah, might as well. Okay, thanks. And then you can add in the language, just to make sure everybody's okay. Zach. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and say it out loud here so everybody's aware, and then if I can get it from you or whoever else afterwards as well.
Okay.
To make sure I get it clear.
Okay. So let's see. I believe that a focus on transit helps to provide strong economic benefits for both statewide and local communities. Transit helps alleviate the burdens of the transportation system on families in our communities by reducing the cost of transportation and by providing additional opportunities for choice in transportation modes. And then robust transit planning and implementation helps to strengthen and promote a strong workforce and is essential for an increase in housing stock. Additionally, it can help to address issues such as congestion and provide more efficiency for commuting throughout the state. I'm open to any thoughts on that language, if anyone has any comments.
I'll follow up with you about that. I missed some of it.
That's all right. I'll email it to you.
Any other discussion?
So are you looking for us to provide this letter for the PC meeting or just have this information for the PC to consider if a letter should be written?
I think maybe just have it available
Okay.
for them if they decide to write a letter. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
I think it'd be nice to have the letter in the packet so that they can take action and approve it with the public already seeing it in
Okay.
advance if possible, personally. That way it's ready to go.
We need to amend
And
the
then-
motion.
I would also add that if staff has any thing along those lines that they might want to add to that. If the rest of the committee is comfortable with that, with staff drafting any recommendations for the letter itself.
Luke and I not voting. Any objections to the motion?
Thank you.
All right, motion approved. I believe that's the end of the action items. Tracking, right?
Yes, it is, sir.
All right, so we're gonna move on to item 6A. Minnesota I&L corridor plan update.
Yes, we have one. Will be giving the presentation or did you want to do an introduction? Okay, we'll have James do introduction, but there'll be a presentation if you guys want to face the screen. I'll turn the light off. On, if you're there, you can go ahead and start sharing your screen if you're presenting.
Yep, got it. Can you see that?
Yes, we do.
Yep.
So
Okay.
before one kicks off, James starts with Sandy's, the project manager for this corridor plan. Back in 2023-26 AMATS tip, $700,000 were programmed from source of funding in 2023 to fund this project. Really, our goal here is to be the vanguard of corridor planning within the Anchorage area. DOT has typically not had this type of planning product for the Anchorage area, so we're very excited to be getting this one on. The first of three, perhaps four, program through the AMATS tip. And really the end result we're looking for is a long-term vision and a roadmap to get to that, where the Department of Transportation, AMATS, the community can come to some sort of compromise ideal of how we'd like to see this corridor managed for the long term. At the end of this process, I expect this to be approved by the department as a official planning product, and it would be also a consideration for AMATS to do the same at a local level. But that's outside of my purview. We have engaged R&M consultants as the contractor for this effort. Wanley, a very competent planner, is the project manager for that team, and I will let her take over from here. Thank you.
All right, thanks, James. Thanks for the great introduction. We're also working with AMATS staff on this, Aaron Young and Ellen, an advisory committee made up of community councils and within the quarter, along with some community members, business members, and a couple of people who wear multiple hats. You know who you are. So the Minnesota I&L Street Corridor Plan is actually an implementation of the 2050 MTP, and also the AMATS safety plan. And this project is coordinated as well with the Complete Streets Plan, which is currently underway. So, all right, so I'll get into it. And then if anyone has any questions at the end, please let me know. A couple of you have seen this presentation because you've been involved with our process. So thank you, and bear with me here. So what are some of our objectives? James mentioned a couple and we don't have any predetermined outcomes, but really our objective is in the end to have some transportation investment decisions that can be made with the community, the Department of Transportation, and of course AMATS and Anchorage, the municipality of Anchorage. So corridor planning, we're trying to integrate the land use, and this part is really key, such as housing, commercial businesses, schools, and parks within the corridor. We are taking a context-sensitive approach to corridor planning because there is multiple contexts. We don't anticipate making the same recommendation for the entire corridor because it serves different purposes, different land uses, different people throughout the corridor. And corridor planning, it treats transportation corridors as spaces or places that enable people to access destinations. So functional classification is something you hear a lot about when you talk about corridors, but the corridor plan objectives are to really tie the land use and access to the corridor's function. We are currently in the issues identification phase of the project, and the goal is to really define the problems well so that our solutions match those problems. So it seems arduous to spend so much time on that piece, but it's really important to get that foundational piece right so that we're solving the right problems as we work through the corridor plan recommendations, alternatives, and then some of the I would say analysis on what are the impacts of those recommendations to the neighborhoods, to the businesses, the community, and to the corridor itself. The other objective of the corridor plan is to really define what the corridor is trying to do within Anchorage, within the larger transportation system. And I'll have a couple slides coming up that will help explain what I mean there. And then I mentioned this earlier, but it's the corridor plan. When we have the plan drafted, it's going to help make transportation investment decisions. So where to spend funds within the corridor and how can it help Anchorage, overall Anchorage and overall land uses and overall the community that uses the area. Okay, so to really understand how to solve some of the issues or even define the issues, we have to go back and really understand why Minnesota was built. And the slide's called The Way We Were. So we're going back and trying to define the origin story, the history of Minnesota. Why do we have Minnesota? When I first moved here over 24 years ago, I always heard Minnesota being called the Minnesota Bypass. Keep in mind, this is also including I&L streets, downtown, all the way to 3rd Avenue. So the way we were when the corridor was built in the late 1960s, we have a little bit of history on this, but Spenard Road was the way to connect on this west side of Anchorage, downtown to South Anchorage. And Minnesota being constructed helped open up land for development, for growth, for housing, for commercial areas, for Anchorage to develop on the west side. You can see in the photo here on the right, the very bottom photo, you can see this. There was a lot of woods back in the day. It was undeveloped. The Aurora Cars is right here, and it's still there today. West High School is over here. So it's really interesting and also important to look at the origins of the development of Anchorage. of this area of Anchorage and to understand the corridor's function and why it was built in the first place. This photo is really fun. We found this in the archives, but the Anchorage Garden Club is planting tulips in the right-of-way. So we'll just skip to today. So we call this Is Us in 2024 when we started the project. Different elements of the corridor, different contexts. Of course, we are a winter city, we are a winter state, so always trying to understand and to remember that we need to plan for our winter conditions as well as the beautiful days that we have in the summer. And as you can see, there's a lot of different contexts here. There's a divided highway section, there's a main street type of corridor section, there's, you know, maintenance happening in the winter. Where do we put the snow? There's attached sidewalks. There's like the beautiful Westchester Lagoon section. So there's multiple sections. There's lots of issues that we've identified so far that we are going to be moving into consolidating and compiling as part of our analysis. A little bit about the corridor. I talked about context. I talked about how, like, where the corridor plan is looking at for this part. It is the International Airport Road on the southern end, and then 3rd Avenue is the northern terminus downtown. So within this entire corridor plan, there are multiple contexts, and we have some of the land uses on the right side of this slide to show you that we have these you know, natural areas, recreation areas. We have our schools, we have our commercial centers in Midtown. So there's a lot of context. So there's housing, low density housing, higher density housing. We have multiple different contexts that we need to plan for and to identify all the issues for, as well as the solutions. Part of our work includes doing a peer city review, and I think the AMATS peer exchange is going to help inform some of what we put into the plan. But what can we learn from other places in the world that are winter cities? How do they address corridor planning? How do they address corridor planning in the winter, corridor maintenance? How do they deal with land use as they're adjacent to corridors? How do they celebrate winter? A couple of these cities, especially Edmonton and Buffalo, we're finding actually have plans that celebrate winter. They embrace winter. It's something they plan for. It's part of their economic development. It's part of how they get through, but not even get through, how they celebrate winter as something that they look forward to. And it's a big part of their economic tourism strategies to help their residents embrace winter and celebrate it as something positive. James talked about corridor vision. So that's really important for us to establish what is the corridor's vision. Like we said, Minnesota was built to help Anchorage grow, and then Anchorage grew up around Minnesota. So how are we helping Minnesota now grow up to serve the rest of the community? It is doing a lot of things for a lot of different people, a lot of different modes, a lot of different functions. Is it doing all those things well? I can say that in some areas we've gotten comments that it's not doing everything for everyone very well. So that's part of our task here with the corridor plan, is to revisit that. What is Minnesota doing? How is it serving Anchorage now that Anchorage has grown up around it? And so we posed this question to the public. We had a mobile workshop in October, and I think many of you came to the Seward Recreation Center. We had really good turnout. We had a trolley. So we did part of the workshop at the rec center, and then we took everyone on a trolley tour of the corridor, the entire corridor, so that we could talk about all the different contexts along the way. We could talk about the change in speeds, change in how the corridor, the lane widths, the speeds, the different contexts, the different views. And we were able to stop multiple times just to talk to our community members that were on the trolley tour, the mobile tour, just to talk about some of the issues that they're seeing, some opportunities that they're seeing, and what their big dream is for the corridor. So we also did this exercise while we were at the Seward Rec Center so that people could capture in writing what some of their ideas were. And these are some of the themes that came out of there. A lot of people want water sidewalks and bike lanes and feel like that's really what's missing to address non-motorized safety and comfort. Speeds were something that came up a lot. And these are kind of foundational things. They're not the glass elevator big dreams. They are very kind of foundational, like basic needs and safety items that people have told us that they would like identified as part of the issues for the corridor. Slower traffic, slower speeds, noise to neighborhoods, safer and easier access for crossing Minnesota. So we heard that a lot. There's not a lot of defined mid-block crossings. People crossing from one side of the neighborhood to the other side of Minnesota. We are already hearing from people what kind of solutions they want to for the corridor plan to look at, including a road diet. We have actually some recommendations for lanes, how many lanes and what speed people would feel comfortable or would perceive to be comfortable, 35 miles per hour. And of course, 0 pedestrian bicycle deaths. We heard more non-motorized safety and a corridor that can be designed for people all year round, as well as more vegetation, more trees, greener corridor. And we did see that with our Peer City review that green infrastructure was something that had come up in a couple cities to help with maintenance, dealing with water, drainage, and of course, comfort for the corridor for other uses besides vehicle traffic. And keep in mind that Minnesota is also, Minnesota INL is also a freight route. So we are working with the freight communities through the Alaska Trucking Association on this corridor plan. They're serving on our advisory committee as well. Okay, so what we've done so far in terms of public engagement for the process, we've done several site walks and bike audits. We actually just did a winter walk audit on January 23rd. It was the rainiest winter I think we've all seen, pouring in the rain, walking around on the corridor, trying to assess how comfortable the corridor is during rush hour, after school, drop off and pick up at Romig and West. Walking along the corridor as it got dark out, a lot of rain, a lot of drainage, ponding, observations. And that was really important as part of this process that we designed for the corridor, is to really see the corridor in all weather, all I guess conditions, so that we can really remind ourselves to plan for all seasons and different conditions for the corridor. And also from a pedestrian standpoint, we did observe people out walking. It was very icy, dark, and quite loud with the downpour that we were experiencing. We've been working with the advisory committee I mentioned earlier. We've had 2 meetings, the site walk, the winter walk audit was the second meeting. We will have 2 more meetings. We'll start getting into some recommendations, preliminary recommendations that we're looking at, and then we'll have the last meeting will be a draft plan. We had the mobile workshop. We'll have another one once we're a little further along and have draft recommendations. We did a DOT chiefs SWOT analysis back in December, and then from there we're compiling. We actually have a compilation of all the SWOT, so that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, and that's helping to define where we should focus identifications of the issues for the corridor. Okay, so this is a SWOT analysis. It's what did we hear? There are strengths within the corridor. There are areas such as Westchester Lagoon, which are scenic and pleasant. That's typically everyone's favorite section of the corridor to drive or bike along. The pathway there, the separated pathway. A lot of traffic can move through this area very quickly, especially if you're commuting or if you're like Ben and you need to use the corridor to get, from work to home, get to the highways, drive up to the valley. This is a strength of the corridor as well as for freight movement. There's a lot of important amenities nearby, destinations that can be accessed off the corridor, so that is a strength. We, as you heard on a couple other slides, is that it's not very pedestrian friendly. There have been fatalities more recently, noise levels, crossings are problematic, speeding, and then just driver behavior along the corridor. The different speed limits or speed signs, I think it's just hard to tell. Is what we heard from people too, like the changes are hard to really navigate. There are good opportunities. So we take these strengths and the weaknesses and we look at them in terms of what are some opportunities for the corridor. I mentioned we're working with Complete Streets policy or plan update for AMATS, and there's an opportunity to make sure that we create the right typology for the corridor. What are the land uses, and does the corridor help match that where it can? And the strengths of the wet threats, this is kind of interesting, but they can be very similar, right? So large volumes of traffic can be a threat as well as a strength. Speeding is obviously a threat in some cases, not necessarily speeding, but the higher speed limits in some sections help people move through the corridor quicker. And then right-of-way concerns, right? How much width do we have? Where can we put snow? We'd heard from maintenance chief that this is a corridor that does not have snow storage, so it has to be removed and moved somewhere else. So those are some of the things that we heard during the SWOT analysis. Okay, and last slide, just quickly on the schedule. James mentioned earlier, we're going to have a draft plan. We've been working on this for about 6 months. We're going to look at recommendations and alternatives and some analysis on what kind of the impacts are of those recommendations to adjacent neighborhoods, schools, land use, and then other transportation corridors that intersect with Minnesota and INL streets. We are doing more community engagements. We're going to have some pop-ups at farmers markets this summer. We're looking at 2 more advisory committee meetings. We're going to have a draft plan and have a public workshop on that. And then we'll be back to the AMATS committees once we are a little further along and have something to show you as an update on what we've learned so far and what our recommendations are. Thank you. James, anything to add?
No, not really. I think you did a great job covering where we're at, where we're going. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions or comments from the committee?
I got a quick one. What are the north and south extents for this study?
The northern terminus is 3rd Avenue and south is International Airport.
Thank you.
Question. I understand that DOT is interested in looking at possible lane reduction opportunities with like a demonstration project. Is that intended to help inform the corridor project, the corridor planning project, or is it 2 separate activities? One related to the surface rehab and then the other one planning effort. I don't know, who can answer that?
Well, kind of from our project team's perspective, doing a lane drop on a facility like Minnesota is a fairly drastic change to the current conditions. And so the idea of doing temporary experimental project to analyze the impact of that is definitely on our minds before just going whole hog into doing that kind of intervention. And I think through a lot of the any of the recommendations, I think there's going to be a piece of, how can we, what are the steps to get to that ultimate change? Because I don't think that anybody's looking for us to go in and make some massive changes without giving it a lot of good thought and understanding of what that's going to be.
Thank you.
Oh, I think it's kind of a combined effort there. I mean, the resurfacing on INL is a near-term opportunity for a project. The corridor study right now, I think that plays into any decisions that we've been making with that resurfacing project. Also continuing to work through what's possible with the resurfacing project versus what would take a larger project to. So.
Good, thanks.
And I think part of what we're looking for in our corridor studies is to identify areas that may have higher potential or be good potentials for some of these protected bike lanes and pilot efforts. And so trying to get a sense of where are some good locations to try this out? How often should we be trying it out? How long are they? If right now we've just been doing some of them in summer, fall, but then being able to come back and go, hey, maybe we hit a couple of corridors multiple times, see what the impacts are. So that's part of what we're looking at in our corridor studies, is trying to identify good locations for some of these so that it doesn't catch the public off guard with, oh, we're doing a protected bike lane out here. So that's part of it too.
I think it just kind of reiterate to what James was saying, these pilot projects, great ways for us to test it out. I mean, we can model all day long, but when you actually shut down a lane and see what happens to the traffic and do that without a multi-million-dollar project, I mean, there's a ton of value in that. And so our Fed partners have been willing to work with us on that too, either with planning studies or with capital projects. So either planning or design, we're able to do that with those efforts. So
Learn a lot from actual demonstration of it. Thank you.
Any other question or comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Not seeing any in the room. Right. Thank you again for the presentation and the information. All right, we're going to move on to 6C on the agenda, peer exchange follow-up.
Yes, thank you. That is me. So as you know, we had a peer exchange last week. Thank you for everybody who was able to attend. I just wanted to give a brief follow-up. Overall, I think it went well. We had some really good discussions. There's some pretty difficult discussions that needed to happen, but I think it was good to get some of that information out in the air so we can all understand where we're coming from. I think one of the biggest takeaways is communication. Constant communication is key, not just at the staff level, but from the very tippy top to the very tippy bottom. Make sure it's continuous for everybody. So everybody knows what's going on and we're all transparent in our approach. So I think it's a positive thing. Looking forward, there were some action items that were set out as part of that for everybody. DOT has a number of them, but we as AMATS have some with our partner MPOs, MVP and FAST, development of STIP schedules. So this will be us kind of outlining how do we develop a TIP? How long does it take? When do we start that? When do we finish it? How about amendments? And getting that all kind of encoded in a policy procedure or something, so people know this is when you have to get your documents to staff. This is when it's going to go to the committees. This is when it's expected to be approval. And then see how many of those we can fit in here. And then getting something for the STIP so we can make sure we're all in alignment. And then one of the things that was asked is how do the MPOs want to be communicated with from DOT? Because I think it was recognized that there were a lot of assumptions being made that this is how the MPOs wanted to be communicated with, and they heard some concerns and said, wait a minute, why don't you guys draft up something and provide it to DOT and say, this is how we would like you to communicate with us. So the directors are going to get together for the MPOs, sit down, flesh out something really quick, a basic kind of approach to it, get it worked through with DOT, and then bring it to the committees and say, hey, is this how you guys want to be communicated with? And then kind of go forward from there. So be on the lookout for things coming in the future. Everybody likes to talk. Well, I do, so everybody else will. We're looking at having some follow-up meetings with DOT to keep the action items moving. So we have a couple meetings that we'll have with the FHWA and Volpe people, the ones who did the peer exchange, as a follow-up on what we're doing with the action items. So we can keep that momentum going forward. So really excited for that. And then another really exciting piece is we now have MPO peers that we can ask direct questions to. I just sent a couple over to the Minnesota St. Cloud group to ask them for some things that we may have been discussing. And kind of just see what other MPOs do. It's nice to hear from the lower 48 in a variety of different ways. How do they approach these difficult things that come up? And, you know, we're always willing to learn and grow. So I want to thank DOT for it. Appreciate it. And I hope we all kind of took away something beneficial from it. So thank you.
I appreciate everyone that made the time to go participate in 2.5 days. So I'd like to open it up to those that were there. If there's anything you'd like to add to what Aaron provided.
I only went for a short period, but it was great. Really nice to meet with the other MPOs, and it was really nice to sit at the table with FHWA. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. The DOT spearhead for getting that set up. So anyways, I found a lot of value by attending and, you know, looking at 2 peer states, North Dakota and Minnesota. One has 8 MPOs and one has 4 MPOs, and how they're all working successfully and off of a long-range transportation strategy. I think my big takeaway is when it works well, you know, you use that long-range transportation strategy as kind of a big vision, and it's a, you know, have the planning, the MPO planners. It gives them a lot of. I just feel like I give them a lot of respect for what they do, and for AMATS, I feel like currently there's this other side, a long-range transportation strategy that's trying to figure out where does that fit in. And my sense is if we were to look at AMATS and empower them with what they've been tasked with, we can really run successfully. So anyways, I just really appreciated being there.
Yeah, I'd like to just say thanks to everybody that took the time. I mean, 2.5 days is a big commitment in this day and age. I know my inbox was pretty interesting by the time I got back. But it was great putting, you know, faces to names across the state, and then the DOTs from the other states and MPOs. I thought very beneficial. I think there's some really good ideas, really good practices happening in Minnesota and North Dakota. The chip is something I'd like to see on the STIP side. I think, you know, some of the stuff will take some work to implement, but I think, I don't know, great experience for me. So again, thanks to everybody that participated in it.
We'll say that the Volpe Center, poor Nicole mentioned she had 55, 56 pages of notes from our discussion. We will be seeing a report at some point in the near future. And I believe we'll be able to share that report with everyone here, so that going forward, those that weren't able to participate will still get the benefit of the conversation. And I will just say from my workload, I've already noticed it's going to be increasing. I've got 2 meetings tomorrow on some of the take-home homework assignments. So I'll guarantee you there'll be a lot more conversations on some of the things we learned and took away from that. But again, I just appreciate everyone's time, because it is a big commitment. But it's a big thing that we've got going on, and I think it's a step in the right direction. So, any other comments or questions from folks that couldn't make it, or anything you guys want to talk further on? Any comments from the public? Not seeing them. Right. I do believe that's the end of our informational items,
Correct.
if I'm tracking. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 7, committee comments. Are there any comments from committee members? Nothing online?
Nope.
Okay. Agenda item number 8, public comments. Are there any comments from the public?
I have some. So I just want to kind of make sure everybody is aware that things are going to get interesting with the new administration coming on board. There are changes happening left and right, kind of every day. We're experiencing them on our end. And I just sent you an email that the suspension approval of the state electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plans and the NEVI program. So just please pay attention to your emails when we send them to you about changes that are happening, because these could have direct impacts on projects that are in our TIP, and we need to figure out how to move forward on them. So buckle up, everybody. Thank you.
Right. With that, we'll move to item number 9, an adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, second, Mr. Boland. And we will adjourn at 2:46.